It was supposed to be casual. Just a brief connection between two young coaches. But sometimes, the people we trust the most hide the darkest secrets. And when Eliza Bloom said goodbye, she unknowingly lit the fuse on a deadly rage. Tonight, we uncover the truth. Not every monster hides in the shadows. Sometimes, they wear a charming smile. There's a certain electricity to new relationships, isn't there? That intoxicating mix of hope and uncertainty, the thrill of discovering someone new. It feels like anything is possible, a wide-open road stretching out ahead. We map out futures in our minds, sometimes grand, sometimes simple. But sometimes, that road takes a sharp, brutal turn into darkness. Sometimes, the promise shatters before it even truly forms. This is the story of such a shattering. It centers on Eliza Bloom, just 21, a young woman brimming with the kind of energy that could light up a room. Vibrant, ambitious, with dreams just starting to take flight, truly, a promising life unfolding. She'd recently navigated the end of a brief relationship, a 5-week whirlwind with a colleague that hadn't quite worked out. A footnote, it might have seemed. An everyday complexity of youth. Except, days later, the unthinkable happened. Eliza's life was violently extinguished. The shocking discovery wasn't in some dark alley or forgotten corner. It was at her workplace, a place meant for routine and purpose, now stained by an unimaginable tragedy. The news sent ripples of fear and confusion through everyone who knew her, and many who didn't. How could this happen? What kind of darkness hides behind a seemingly normal facade, capable of such devastation after only a brief connection? It leaves you wondering, are the places we think are safe ever truly secure? This is the question that hangs heavy in the air as we try to piece together the events that led to that horrifying moment and the chilling investigation that followed. To grasp the depth of this loss, we first need to understand the brightness of the life that was stolen, the potential that was so cruelly erased. So, who was Eliza Bloom, the young woman whose promising life met such a tragic end? Beyond the headlines, she was a force of nature. Imagine sunshine condensed into human form, maybe? Growing up in the coastal town of Seaside Cove, with loving parents John and Sarah and a younger brother, Michael, Eliza seemed to absorb the ocean's energy. She was fiercely independent, even from her days at the prestigious St. Catherine's Academy for Girls, always carving her own path with a confidence that drew people in. She wasn't just self-assured, she had this incredible way of making you feel more capable too, just by being near her positive energy. Her background pulsed with vitality. University wasn't just about textbooks. Studying sports business was a launchpad for her clear ambitions to make her mark. Eliza wasn't one for idle moments. Friends, family, dancing, performing, she embraced it all. But her true passion? Water polo. It wasn't just a hobby, it was practically in her blood. Her father, John, had been a coach, and Eliza eagerly followed, pouring her heart into coaching the junior team at the well-regarded St. Augustine's Academy. You could see her dedication shine through. The kids adored her, not just for her skill but for her infectious enthusiasm. It wasn't just drills, she'd remember small details about each kid, making them feel like stars in their own right. She simply had a knack for making people feel seen, valued. What a loss. Her positive impact was undeniable, her future seemingly bright and limitless. It's heartbreaking to think that this place of passion, St. Augustine's Academy, this hub of youthful energy and aspiration, would become the backdrop for unimaginable darkness. It was within these familiar, respected halls, amidst the echo of splashing water and cheering students, that another figure moved into her orbit, someone whose presence would ultimately lead to devastation. That figure was Mark Ashton, another coach moving through the same bustling hallways of St. Augustine's Academy, his background seemingly polished and promising. On the surface, Mark was everything you'd expect from someone raised with privilege and opportunity, charming, composed, seemingly destined for success. His family was well established, and Mark appeared to wear that legacy comfortably. Like Eliza, he was deeply embedded in the school's world, a former student himself, even a sports captain back in the day. Now, he was an ambitious young man juggling multiple roles, coaching hockey and cricket, coordinating after-hours activities, all while pursuing a master's degree with plans to become a teacher. Impressive, right? He presented as calm, capable, the kind of colleague who was generally pleasant to be around. But beneath that smooth exterior, there were perhaps quieter currents. Those who shared his living space off-campus painted a slightly different picture, not unfriendly, exactly, but reserved. A preference for solitude. Less inclined towards casual socializing, more comfortable in his own space. Polite, sure, but maybe a little distant. It creates a slightly more complex character than just the golden boy image. Was it simple introversion, or was there something else held back behind the composed demeanor? Hindsight, of course, casts long shadows. At the time, he was just Mark Ashton, another dedicated, ambitious coach working alongside Eliza Bloom at St. Augustine's Academy. Two driven individuals, sharing the same space, the same professional world. Perhaps it was inevitable that their paths would eventually intertwine more closely. What likely started as simple colleague interactions, professional nods and busy corridors, soon began to spark into something else entirely. And intertwine they did. What likely began as shared shifts and casual chats between Eliza and Mark soon deepened that autumn. Maybe it was the long hours, the shared environment of St. Augustine's, or just proximity. Whatever the spark, it ignited quickly, a brief, intense flash of a relationship that lasted only about 5 weeks. From the outset, Eliza seemed clear. She wasn't looking for anything heavy, just keeping things casual, perhaps navigating the tricky waters of a workplace romance with caution. Maybe it was the potential for gossip at the academy, or perhaps some unnamed intuition urged her towards secrecy, towards keeping it light, no strings attached. Friends might have known, but it wasn't public. But even in that short time, something felt off. A subtle tension began to thread through their interactions. Maybe it was the way Mark's questions about her plans started feeling less like curiosity and more like interrogation. A seemingly casual query about who she was texting that lingered a bit too long, carrying an unexpected weight. It was enough to make Eliza, fiercely independent Eliza, uncomfortable. This wasn't the easy connection she'd envisioned. So, she ended it. Gently, but firmly. Mark's reaction, on the surface, was surprisingly calm. No drama, no arguments, no desperate attempts to change her mind. He just nodded, maybe offered a tight smile. Okay, Eliza. If that's what you want. An acceptance that felt almost too smooth, too practiced. Because beneath that composed exterior, a different storm was brewing. Rejection wasn't familiar territory for Mark Ashton, and this dismissal, however gently delivered, struck a nerve. It wasn't just disappointment, it felt like a deep, personal affront, a significant blow to a carefully constructed ego. The relationship was over for Eliza, a brief chapter closed. But for Mark, simmering beneath that placid surface, the rejection wasn't an ending. It was fuel. And just days later, that hidden, bruised ego and suppressed fury would erupt with devastating consequences. Days. That's all it took for that simmering rage to boil over. October 25th began like any other ordinary Wednesday for the Bloom family, breakfast together, casual chat between Eliza, John, and Sarah, maybe discussing evening plans, the mundane rhythm of family life. Eliza, reliable as ever, headed off for her coaching shift at St. Augustine's Academy, likely focused on the practice ahead, perhaps navigating the slight disruption caused by upcoming school exams temporarily taking over the usual gymnasium space. Normalcy. Routine. Until it wasn't. As evening bled into night, a knot of worry began tightening in her parents' chests back in Seaside Cove. Eliza wasn't home. She wasn't answering calls. Texts went unread, stark notifications on silent screens, each unanswered ping amplifying the dread. This wasn't like her. At all. Initial annoyance morphed into gnawing unease, then bloomed into full-blown parental panic. Hours crawled by like years. Each unanswered call, each moment of silence on the other end of the line, felt heavier than the last. Finally, heartbeats pounding with a fear too deep for words, John and Sarah Bloom did what felt both necessary and terrifyingly final. They filed a missing person report. But even as they grappled with that awful step, the situation escalated elsewhere. A chillingly anonymous call came into the police station just hours later. A curt report of a body found. Not just anywhere, but inside the St. Augustine's Academy gymnasium bathroom. Officers rushed to the scene, professional urgency barely masking the grim possibility. Pushing through the bathroom door, the first responders were met with a scene of stark, brutal violence that contrasted sharply with the ordered calm of the prestigious school grounds. The air hung heavy, cold. A young woman lay lifeless on the sterile tile floor, the victim of a savage attack. Tragically, devastatingly, she was soon identified. It was 21-year-old Eliza Bloom. Hope disappeared in an instant, replaced by chilling disbelief and the immediate, agonizing task of figuring out who could have committed such a horrific act. The scene screamed violence, a life brutally stolen. The horrific confirmation landed like a physical blow. Who could have done this? In the chaotic aftermath, that burning question demanded answers. St. Augustine's Academy, moments before a place of youthful energy and learning, transformed instantly into a tightly controlled crime scene. Flashing red and blue lights cut through the darkness, casting eerie shadows on the manicured lawns. Yellow tape stretched taut, a stark boundary between the ordinary world and the horror discovered within. Grim-faced officers moved with purpose, their presence a heavy contrast to the usual evening quiet of the prestigious school grounds. Into this maelstrom walked John Bloom, Eliza's father. He'd received a text message earlier, a bizarrely vague and alarming summons from his daughter's phone, "Come to school, trouble." He'd rushed over, heart pounding, imagining perhaps a minor accident, needing a ride, anything but this. Then he saw the sea of official vehicles, the solemn faces, the ubiquitous yellow tape barring his way. His breath hitched. An officer intercepted him before he could push forward, a look of profound sympathy and dread in the man's eyes. That look, even before the gentle, devastating words were spoken, told John everything. His world fractured in that instant. As investigators began the painstaking work of processing the scene inside the gymnasium bathroom, they also started speaking with Eliza's distraught family and friends. Amidst the tears and shock, one name surfaced repeatedly: Mark Ashton. The colleague. The ambitious coach Eliza had briefly dated. The man she had broken up with just days before. The proximity, the timing, it was too much to ignore. Suspicion quickly coalesced around him. Mark Ashton became the prime suspect in the police investigation. But suspicion needed proof. Methodically, detectives turned to the school's network of security cameras, crucial eyes in the unfolding evidence trail. Hours of CCTV footage were meticulously reviewed. Then, the breakthrough. Cold, hard digital proof. Around 7 p.m., Eliza was seen walking towards the gymnasium bathroom. Shortly after, the footage showed Mark Ashton following her inside. An agonizing hour passed with no movement detected from the doorway. Then, Mark emerged. Alone. The camera's unblinking eye had captured the horrifying sequence. The who seemed chillingly clear. The police investigation now pivoted, racing against time. Where had Mark Ashton gone after leaving that gymnasium bathroom? What horrifying steps had he taken next? The who seemed chillingly clear thanks to the CCTV footage. The police investigation now pivoted, racing against time. Where had Mark Ashton gone after leaving that gymnasium bathroom? As investigators scrambled, technology offered the first crucial leads, ironically stemming from Mark's own actions. That strangely worded text message sent from Eliza's phone to her father, and the anonymous tip reporting the body, both were traced. The signals pinged near Diamond Point Lookout, a rugged, windswept cliffside reserve overlooking the turbulent ocean. A place known for dramatic views, now the focus of intense scrutiny. Security cameras near the lookout yielded their own grim narrative. Footage from later that same evening, around 8:47 p.m., showed Mark Ashton pulling up in a nondescript silver sedan, noted later as a rental, a detail that would add another layer to the question of premeditation. He calmly exited the car, carrying a bag, walked purposefully towards a public area near the cliff edge, and disappeared from frame for several minutes. When he reappeared at 9:12 p.m., walking back to the car, the bag was gone. His demeanor? Disturbingly composed, almost casual, a terrifying counterpoint to the violence unleashed just hours earlier. He sat in the car for nearly 40 minutes before finally driving away into the night. Investigators knew exactly where to look. Following the path Mark took on the video led them to a metal trash bin. Inside, bundled with some of Mark's personal items, a backpack, distinctive wireless earbuds, they found it. A hammer. Quickly determined to be the likely murder weapon used in the brutal attack on Eliza Bloom. The evidence of calculated disposal was mounting, but the suspect himself was still missing. A frantic manhunt ensued. Had Mark fled the city? Used his affluent family's resources to escape the country, perhaps heading back to the Netherlands, his family's homeland? The possibilities were numerous, the pressure immense. Then, 3 days later, the search came to a somber end. Early on October 28th, workers near Harbor's Leap, a notorious suicide spot just minutes from Diamond Point Lookout, reported seeing a body in the water below the cliffs. Recovery operations were hampered by rough conditions, but eventually, the body was retrieved. Dental records soon confirmed the inevitable. It was 22-year-old Mark Ashton. The timeline seemed brutally clear: kill Eliza, dispose of the evidence, make the calls to authorities and Eliza's father around 11 p.m., then jump to his death. The manhunt was over. Mark Ashton was dead. But his final act provided no real answers, only deepening the horrifying mystery. It closed the where, but ripped open the far more complex and agonizing question: why? Why resort to such utter brutality? Why? The question echoed in the silence left by Mark Ashton's death, a chilling counterpoint to the violence he'd unleashed. On paper, frustratingly, there was little to suggest such a capacity for brutality. No significant official criminal history, no prior charges for violence. Nothing that screamed danger to the unsuspecting world. So, what darkness festered beneath that carefully maintained surface of the charming, ambitious coach? The answer, perhaps, lies in the shadows of his past relationships, shadows that only began to emerge after the tragedy. A former girlfriend, let's call her Chloe, bravely came forward, her story painting a deeply disturbing picture. She recounted how Mark's initial charm, the very quality that likely drew Eliza in, slowly morphed into something suffocating. An insidious controlling behavior began to surface. It started small, persistent questions about where she was going, who she was talking to. Then it escalated into outright obsession, monitoring her movements, questioning her friendships. Chloe described trying to end the relationship, only to be met with an explosive rage that terrified her. In one chilling incident, after she questioned his anger, he violently punched a nearby tree, spitting out the terrifying words, "Because I can't punch the one thing I really want to." The implication hung heavy and poisonous in the air. If that wasn't horrifying enough, after she finally broke free, the obsession turned into stalking. He began appearing unexpectedly, even peering through her windows late at night until a desperate scream and her father wielding a cricket bat finally chased him away. It was a stark warning sign, a glimpse of the volatile rage lurking just beneath Mark's composed veneer, ignited by the perceived loss of control. This past behavior casts a dark shadow over his interactions with Eliza. It suggests a terrifying pattern: rejection wasn't met with sadness, but with fury and a dangerous possessiveness. When Eliza ended their brief relationship, did she unknowingly trigger that same explosive rage? It seems chillingly likely. And the evidence suggests this wasn't simply an impulsive act of uncontrolled anger. Investigators discovered the hammer used in the attack had been purchased just days before, likely right around the time Eliza called things off. Then there was the rental car he used on the day of the murder. Why rent a car when he already owned one? It points towards forethought, towards premeditation. A plan. Criminal psychologist Dr. Evelyn Reed, a fictional composite representing expert analysis, might suggest these actions align with certain narcissistic traits, a profound sense of entitlement, an inability to handle rejection or criticism, viewing it as a deep personal injury, and a tendency towards vengeful rage when that inflated self-image is threatened. Losing control over Eliza, someone he perhaps viewed as an extension of his own ego, could have triggered a catastrophic narcissistic injury, leading him to reclaim dominance through the most brutal means possible. The calculated cruelty, especially that horrifying text message sent from Eliza's phone to lure her father to the scene, speaks volumes. It wasn't just about ending a life, it seems designed to inflict maximum psychological torment, a final, sadistic assertion of power. While we can only piece together the psychological puzzle, the picture that emerges is one of dangerous entitlement and explosive rage hidden behind charm. Understanding the darkness, however, offers little comfort against the stark reality of the devastation left behind. While piecing together Mark Ashton's distorted motives offers a grim sort of understanding, it does absolutely nothing to mend the shattered lives of the Bloom family. His suicide, perhaps seen by him as some final act, only served to deepen their wounds, stealing any chance for answers, for confrontation, for the semblance of closure a trial might have offered. For John and Sarah Bloom, and their son Michael, the aftermath is an endless landscape of grief, punctuated by agonizing what-ifs and the raw pain of Eliza's absence. John Bloom is forever haunted by the memory of that night, the chillingly vague text message, the flashing police lights, the horrific scene that replaced the image of his beloved daughter. For Sarah, battling her own serious health struggles, the unimaginable emotional burden of losing Eliza compounded her physical pain, a heavy cloak of sorrow making every day a fight. How does one navigate profound grief while also fighting for one's own health? It's an impossible burden. Eliza's funeral, held weeks later, was intentionally vibrant. Hundreds gathered, honoring the family's request to wear bright florals, a defiant splash of color against the overwhelming gray of loss, a testament to the bright spark Eliza had been in so many lives. Yet, even amidst the celebration of her memory, the pain remains palpable. The Blooms find echoes of Eliza everywhere, in the familiar paths of Seaside Cove, and the quiet moments at home. Her presence lingers, a joyful memory intertwined with unbearable sorrow. For John, that sorrow is mixed with a white-hot rage directed at the man he can only bring himself to call an evil monster. In the face of such senseless tragedy, the Bloom family has begun channeling their pain into advocacy, hoping to raise awareness about relationship safety and the subtle warning signs of controlling behavior. Because ultimately, Eliza's death was utterly senseless. A promising life extinguished by one man's fragile ego, his dangerous inability to handle rejection, his profound emotional instability. It's a devastating reminder that sometimes the deepest dangers hide behind the most ordinary faces, leaving an empty chair at the family table and an echo of pain that never truly fades.